Welcome back to my channel. Now today we are looking exclusively at Geelong, but for you Hawthorn fans, you Collingwood fans, you Brisbane fans and footy fans everywhere, for the entire week this week, this is what we are going to be posting. We've got Geelong today, we've got Hawthorn tomorrow, we'll do Collingwood on Thursday, Brisbane on Friday, and then obviously the game reviews from both of the massive prelim finals at the MCG, back-to-back, Friday night, Saturday twilight. This is what we live for as footy fans, so if you want to see all these videos, please feel free to stick around and subscribe because then you won't miss them. But let's just get straight into it. So, firstly, what we're going to be looking at is Geelong's biggest weapons, and I think this is what separates Geelong from a lot of the other teams, and it has for a while, and it is their ball use going inside forward 50. This is one of their biggest weapons. This is why they get so many uncontested marks inside their forward 50. This is why they are the best mark inside forward 50 team in the league by a massive margin. It is the way that they use the ball going inside forward 50, and it comes from all of their players. It's not just their forwards in Brian Myers, although it is a lot of the time, and Brad Close and Paddy Dangerfield and Jeremy Cameron when he pushes up the ground. Their midfielders can seriously kick the football. We've seen Max Holmes do it. Look at Bailey Smith. This is on the left foot. Absolutely lace out here to Jack Henry, who should take that mark. But again, look at the ball use here from Jack Henry. So he drops the mark. He's got Nick Blakey on his tail. Realistically, we see a lot of players turn around to their right boot, their dominant side, throw it on the boot. But look at this poise. Look at this understanding. Look at this comfortability in the Geelong system and the trust in the Geelong players. He's turned to the skinny side of the ground where there's such a smaller amount of options available, and he still is able to find the easy target inside forward 50 in Tyson Stengel. He goes back and kicks the goal. The next clip is their two midfielders. So Tom Atkins, not necessarily known as a really good ball user, look streaming through the middle of the ground, and look at the quick twist of the eyes to just shift this ball to the left because he knows that his forwards aren't leading up at the football yet. He's able to shift the ball to the outside of the contest here in Max Holmes, and what Max Holmes does is brilliant. So it works with the forward line first. So we've got Danger leading up here, we've got Shannon Neal leading up here, and Brad Close clearing the space. But look at the work that the forwards do, and then look at the poise, and look at the understanding of Max Holmes here. Sorry, I was trying to find the word. The understanding of Max Holmes here to find the great option in this forward 50. So we see both of them leading to the same space, but Shannon Neal's ability and understanding that Dangerfield's running into here. So if he leads into here, he's going to drag Lewis Malikin into this contest. Instead, he now leads around. Dangerfield's going to wrap all the way across this contest to the space that Brad Close is creating by moving back towards goal here. Dangerfield is going to take Brad Close's spot. Neal is now going to take Danger's spot. So realistically, Holmes could kick to Neal in this situation. And then he ignores all of those options, but then look at the re-leads here. So this is all of it. So now Shannon Neal coming across to this side. He's looking at Dangerfield going, I can't move to here because Brad Close hasn't quite moved there, which means Danger can't move there. And instead, he goes, I'm going to go back to this goal square right now. Brad Close is going to come out here, which means if Brad Close is going to come out to here, Danger must come back at the football because Shannon Neal is going to go back there. They are consistently moving inside their forward 50, and their ball use looks so good because of how good their kickers are and how good their decision makers are. But just this 3 forward line system right now, just in this half of the forward 50, is excellent. And what that allows is as soon as he goes back there and Brad Close starts to come up here, that forces Dangerfield straight up here, and he just gets to go bang. And it's that separation of the forwards that is just unbelievably good to look at. And then the second biggest weapon that they possess is their turnover game. And we're going to look at a really quick example of the Bulldogs because I think the Bulldogs' defensive structure is very similar to the Hawthorn defensive structure. And I'll tell you why, but it's not because of the way that Hawthorn play, it's the way that Geelong play against Hawthorn. And I just want you to watch and then I'll explain after that. So James Harmes, it's just a poor kick going inside forward 50. Instantly we have the turnover. But that comes from the swarming pressure here from the Geelong players. So their ability to swarm the person with the football and have really good structure behind the football is just a quality that so many teams don't possess. And it's why their turnover game is probably the best, if not the second best in the league at the moment. So as soon as they turn this football over, they identify how to exit to the other side. So they escape this massive congestion of players here where there are more Bulldogs players than Geelong players. And then they just spread from this contest so quickly. And this is what I mean about Hawthorn and the Bulldogs being quite similar. So we'll see when we look at the round 6 matchup how many times Tom Barras was caught in this situation in a 1v1, it was often against Paddy Dangerfield, and that just meant that there was just a clear advantage for Paddy Dangerfield to just work him off on the back of turnover. So Jeremy Cameron here against Rory Lobb on turnover, held back inside the forward 50. That's what gives him the one-on-one opportunity off turnover, and they do this so often with the Geelong forward line players, is they often hold a full forward or a forward pocket or a Paddy Dangerfield really deep inside their forward 50, and it just gives them so much leeway to play one-on-one football off turnover. And we'll see when we look at the round 6 review how they did that with Tom Barras versus Paddy Dangerfield, and how they exposed Tom Barras's just inability to keep up on the lead. And that's just one of his downfalls as a player. He's a great player, great intercept marker, great spoiler, but on the lead, he's so gettable, and off turnover, just like we saw there, Geelong are so dangerous, and that is where I think they can pull apart the Hawks. And their turnovers come in the defensive half with their intercept markers like Tom Stewart and Jack Henry and O'Sullivan at the moment, but a lot of their turnovers come in the forward half of the ground, and it comes because they just have genuinely just swarming pressure. So as soon as Fletcher gets his handle out, just has absolutely nowhere to go. 3 Geelong players in the vicinity ready to take him over the boundary line. Obviously, he can't just go over, and that is how they get a forward half turnover, by him kicking out on the full. But look at the setup defensively anyway. So we have Mark O'Connor, we've got Max Hines, and we have Zach Guthrie, ready to just take an intercept mark no matter where the Brisbane Lions exited their defensive 50. And we're going to see a very similar thing right now. So as soon as they get the ball inside their forward 50, their pressure is so good that it forces you to just make not dumb mistakes, but dumb mistakes. So we're going to see, as soon as this ball goes up inside the Geelong forward 50 right now, the ball comes to ground, and then he's just swarming pressure. They don't allow you to handball and chain handball out the way. You can't just put it on your boot straight away, because if you do, you're just kicking straight into the Geelong spare man behind the football. And so it forces you to do things like this. So Jared Berry's just got to get rid of this football. Zach Bailey doesn't want to pick it up, because look who is at their feet in front of this contest. He's got to take on 3, maybe 4 tacklers if Shannon Neal can get there before a single Brisbane Lions player is in the vicinity. So the 4 closest players to this football are Geelong players. So Zach Bailey's thinking, I can't pick this football up, because if I do, we're getting a stoppage. We're under pressure. Let's just try and get the ball out of our defensive 50. And as soon as you do that, look, the spare man behind the football here, Jack Henry in a proactive position now, and there is a spare behind the football here in Tom Stewart. So no matter what kick was coming out of that defensive 50 stoppage, whether it was a quick kick off the ground straight to Jeremy Cameron, where it was a quick kick off the ground into an intermediate space where Jack Henry's going to take the mark, or if it was a bang on the boot, Tom Stewart's ready to take that mark. So their turnover game is based on their pressure system and their defensive system behind the football, and it is just wonderful to watch. So we've spoken about their forward half and their entries going inside forward 50. We've spoken about their turnover game and their pressure game inside their forward 50 that feeds their turnover game consistently. And then I think the biggest weapon is in the coaching box. This might be the biggest weapon in the entire league. It is the coaches being able to diagnose issues and then fix them, but also the players being willing and able to adapt their game style and the way that they play and the way that they think about playing to the specific opposition that they're playing against. So this is Brisbane in round 15, and we covered this in last week's video when we spoke about the qualifying final between Geelong and Brisbane, but I think it is such an apt example that it is worth going over again. So round 15, remember, we're at GMHBA Stadium, and look at the ability for the Brisbane Lions to move the football. As one of the best ball movement teams in the league, this is what the Brisbane Lions were able to do. So switch the ball to the other side of the ground, get the ball to the outnumber here over in Levi Ashcroft, but then it's after Levi Ashcroft picks up this football that makes the Brisbane Lions so good. So it's the run through from Starcevic that opens up the entire game here for the Lions, and as soon as they do that, they have broken through that first wave of pressure through the handball game from Jack Henry. And as soon as he kicks his football, we're going to go to the wide angle shot, and we're going to see the amount of Geelong spares that they overtake or they overlap. So Guthrie in a poor position. We've got Atkins through the middle of the ground in a poor position. And we've got Jack Henry and Tom Stewart both now standing in no man's land, because as soon as Bailey picks up this football and they get the ball through the middle of the ground here, now all of the Geelong defenders are in no man's land. They're in a poor position to defend, and that is why Charlie Cameron can take this uncontested mark inside forward 50. He pops it over the top here to Logan Morris, and the Brisbane Lions ball movement game just exposes Geelong. So this is what they were able to do the first time they played, and this is why the Brisbane Lions pretty much demolished Geelong at GMHBA Stadium. So the overlap handball game, the run straight through the middle and force the defensive structuring Jack Henry and Tom Stewart and Zach Guthrie, who are usually so good at being really good spare man in defence and being in the right positions. The Brisbane Lions made them essentially useless by putting their positions in no man's land through their uncontested mark game and that overlap handball that we saw from Levi Ashcroft to Brandon Starcevich, and then the second one from young Marshall over to Zach Bailey through the middle of the ground that opened it up for Charlie Cameron and Logan Morris. So that was round 15, but the adaptability of the Geelong Cats to change that and be able to shut that down when they played in the qualifying final, it was wonderful. And so now we're back at the qualifying final, and again I showed it this last week in last week's video, but the Levi Ashcroft to Jasper Fletcher kick through the middle of the ground. This is usually where Dane Zorko wraps around this side of the contest and is able to run straight through the middle of the ground. But again, look at the work of Tom Stewart now being able to understand that he's got to start moving over to this side of the ground. Brad Close forces Shannon Neal to take this handball and put the pressure on this handball. But also look at the work of Zach Guthrie. He's now standing maybe 10, 15 metres further away than we saw in the round 15 clash. The same with Tom Stewart. So even if Dane Zorko is able to get this handball, he's not able to get the kick all the way to Charlie Cameron standing by himself without Zach Guthrie being able to get over there and help defend that. So it's the work of the defensive structure behind the football, but it's also the work of the forward pressure to understand that Dane Zorko wants to get this handball back like Brandon Starcevich did in the round 15 example, and Brad Close actively telling Shannon Neal to hand over this defensive assignment right now, which forces Zorko to try and go through this side of the contest, to go really far left when realistically he wants to go straight through the middle of the ground. And as soon as they were able to do that, the swarming pressure here from the Geelong creates the turnover, and that is how they go forward and kick a goal. And they just stymied the ability for the Brisbane Lions to move the ball out of their back half, and they got so many forward half turnovers from that exact thing. Which is what brings us to the Geelong versus Hawthorn matchup, because we saw them play in round 6, and it's the only time they played this year. And it was a genuine cracker, but there were so many opportunities for the Geelong coaches to understand where they went wrong. And I just think their ability to adapt to that game and to understand all of the maybe slight issues, slight tweaks, slight openings like we saw them do with the Brisbane Lions game is just going to open so many opportunities for Chris Scott and the coaching staff to expose the Hawthorn team as a whole. So we saw last time, we saw the midfield battle was very key, very pivotal in who was scoring. We saw John Newcomb had a really good game. Obviously, everyone thinks that Oisin Mullen is going to go to John Newcomb and cut that out, and then it becomes, can the rest of the Hawthorn mids step up? If Newcomb is shut out of the game, can Josh Ward have another really good game and take the next step? Can Connor Nash come up and take the next step? Can a Connor McDonald or a Nick Watson or a James Warble, can these guys take the next step as bona fide midfielders to take it up to this Geelong midfield if Geelong is able to cut out Jai Newcomb from this Hawthorn midfield with a tag, with a genuine hard tag that we don't often see in today's football? So it's these sort of matchups that I'm just curious about, and it's the adaptability of the Geelong Cats that I'm scared Hawthorn won't be able to keep up with. Speaking of round 6, when Geelong did beat Hawthorn, I actually think a lot of it came down to how good Geelong were defensively. They did leak a few goals from centre stoppage and from stoppages as a whole, but again, I think the adaptability of the Cats, they will be able to shut that scoring down from stoppage. And then it just becomes how good were Geelong in their defensive structure and their defensive mindset. So I'll split up into two things. One, the first thing we're going to look at is the Geelong defensive mindset in that game. And then the second thing we're going to look at is the Geelong defensive structure and how those two things stopped Hawthorn from scoring a lot of the time they had the football, because they did dominate a lot of possession. They won marks, they won inside 50s, they won contested possessions, they won a lot of these key stats that we look at the end of the game and say, how did they not win this game? And I think it was because how good Geelong were defensively minded and defensively structured. So let's have a look at that now. The first thing I want to focus on is the Geelong defensive mindset. So we're going to see this ball inside the Geelong defensive 50. It hits the deck. We're going to see some really good pressure here from all of the Geelong players, and we see how good Geelong surround contests and surround the football, which doesn't allow the person with the football here, Jack Gunston, pretty much anywhere to go. So as soon as he does that, he's forced to turn into this 360 and not get rid of the football the way he wants to, because Geelong just surround the person with the football and don't give them any easy exits. But I want us to really focus on here is the work of the Geelong forwards. So we are deep inside the Geelong defensive 50. The Geelong forwards here in Brad Close, and as soon as we go to a slightly wider angle, we are going to see the rest of the forwards. So Sean Manor, Brian Myers, and Brad Close are all deep inside the defensive 50 because they are so switched on to how important it is to the Geelong system to swarm and create this circle of pressure around every single contest. So when we see Jack Gunston with the football there and Geelong's ability to create essentially a ring of pressure around him so he doesn't have any options to go, the only way that's possible is if you can commit numbers all the way around the football, all the way around the ground. So these are where these forwards are so important to the way Geelong play, because if these guys don't push back, then all of the people who are playing defence and playing midfield have to actually go and man up their opponent around these contests, and they can't create that ring of pressure. But when these guys can come back and give a chop out to the midfielders and the defenders, that is when they can create this ring of pressure. That is when they can create spares, and that is how they create so many turnovers. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the defensive mindset of the Geelong Cats. They are so willing to put their game aside, to be genuine defenders, to put themselves in defensive positions, and it actually opens up a lot of their scoring. So we just saw all three forwards. We saw Myers, we saw Close, and we saw Manor inside the defensive 50. So when Ollie Dempsey looks up, look at the players who are the ones that are going to get this football. So this football could go to Brian Myers. Sean Manor is now leading his man up the ground. And the one who ends up getting this is Brad Close. Look at where he has ran from. So Scrimshaw is now 20 to 30 metres away. Sicily is now 20, 30 metres away from Brad Close in this situation. So as soon as he gets his football, that creates the overlap, that creates the spare inside 50, and they get a really good, easy shot on goal here from Paddy Dangerfield. And that comes from the defensive mindset of the Geelong Cats players. Talking about defensive mindset and defensive structure. Look at the defensive structure here. So we're inside a forward 50 stoppage for Geelong. So we have the long spare here in Sam DeConey. We've got the short spare here in Tom Stewart. But their ability to manipulate who they want Hawthorn to have as their spare is so smart. So we've got Brad Close here giving directions to Paddy Dangerfield to put him in the ruck. And all of the other Geelong forwards and Geelong midfielders are going to one-on-one situations where they actually create Tom Barrass as the spare. And if you're a Hawthorn fan, probably the last person you want as a spare around a defensive 50 contest is Tom Barrass. He's not a noted ball user. He's not a noted distributor. He's not necessarily a noted good decision maker. So if Geelong, and they do, can create Tom Barrass as the spare instead of a player like a James Sicily, or instead of a player like a Newcombe or a Ward, or even a Scrimshaw in this situation, Danger's ability to split these two, as Brad Close was telling him to do, and then Ollie Dempsey's ability to take away the other distributors here, as well as Jeremy Cameron. This forces the spare for the Hawthorn Hawks to be Tom Barrass. So when this ball spills out to the back of the contest, Tom Barrass is the one with the football. If that is any other player, if that's a Jack Scrimshaw, if that's even a Josh Weddle, you would almost expect them to wheel around to this side of the contest to take the tackler on in Brad Close. But Brad Close has no fear of Tom Barrass turning around and making a really good decision or a really good kick out of the defensive 50. So he's able to say, I know you're going to hand pass this football because you're not the distributor in this defensive 50. So that's as soon as he gets his football, Brad Close is already committed to cutting off the exit for James Sicily. And that is what creates this sort of pressure here. So as soon as James Sicily has to put this football on the boot, that is where we get the intercept mark from the intermediate spare in Max Holmes, or it could have been Tom Stewart about 10 metres behind him right there. That is the structure, and that is the system, and that is the smarts of Geelong. So against Hawthorn that we saw in round 6, it was their defensive mindset and the defensive structure like this that made them so hard to beat. And then when we switch our mindset to what the Hawks are susceptible at, we know that they're susceptible when you can take contested marks. We saw that against the Crows. The only way that the Crows could score in the final on the weekend was when they took contested marks. So we understand that you can beat them one-on-one in the air. The issue is the Hawks just don't give up a lot of contests one-on-one in the air, so I'm not even going to focus on that because I don't think it's going to be that massive of a factor. But the stoppage work is going to be a factor because Geelong are really good around stoppage, and although the Hawks were really good around stoppage with Jai Newcomb and with Josh Ward against the Crows, they are very susceptible around stoppage. So it's really simple things like just not being defensively minded. So in this situation, up 30 points against the Giants, and the Giants have kicked the last few goals, and the ball is inside the Giants' forward half of the ground, and it's just like a little mindset around stoppage that they just don't quite get right. So we're going to see Josh Kelly and Tom Green here work as a really good duo. So Tom Green has gone over to Jai Newcomb and said, hey, let's try and double team this person, and if no one follows us and the ball comes to us, we're going to create a really easy 2v1 around stoppage. So as soon as this ball comes up, look at this. It is such an easy concept, and Hawthorn just didn't quite pick up on it. The spare at the back of this contest in Jarman Impey and Sam Butler, who are standing essentially by themselves because Jarman Impey has let Tom Green go up to the front of this stoppage by himself. So it's simple things like that, just closing down that stoppage space that just costs Hawthorn around these contests quite a lot. So as soon as this ball goes up in the air, this 2v1 action is so easy because if you're Massimo D'Ambrosio, you know that you can't necessarily get out the side of this stoppage because O'Halloran is going to be able to cut you off. But for the Giants, if they can get goal side of this stoppage, they can become really, really dangerous. So as soon as this ball hits the ground, instantly becomes a 2v1 with Jai Newcomb and a 3v2 with Lloyd Meek jumping in there as well. And then as soon as Josh Kelly gets his football, that is what allows Tom Green off the 2v1. Jai Newcomb has been sucked in slightly, just half a step to follow Josh Kelly. But that's all it takes. It is genuinely half a step that allows Tom Green to get to the outside of this contest and get the handball out. And it goes out to Toby Green. And again, it's just that half metre, that tiny bit of separation around stoppage that the Hawks give up quite a lot that just makes him so susceptible. So then as soon as that ball hits the ground, we're going to see Barris, who was just able to create, he was so far behind Jesse Hogan as soon as the ball hit the ground that he's not even on screen for these contests as soon as Jesse Hogan picks it up. He's essentially created 5 metres of difference when he started at the top of the goal square, and he's only maybe 5 metres away from the top of the goal square. So it's that stoppage work, and it is Tom Barris on the lead, and I think that is going to be a real danger for the Giants. No, not for the Giants, for the Hawks coming into this game. It's literally just the creation of separation so quickly around stoppage that just puts the Hawks on the back foot if they don't get first possession. So Kelly's ability to just run away from Nash at this contest and then force Newcomb and Butler to both essentially have to play him at this contest, which is going to allow Whitfield to get all the way over the back of this stoppage, is just so simple and such a small detail that the Hawks just seem to mess up too often, I think, in my opinion. And then off the back of that, if you allow the Giants, or if you allow the Geelong Cats, for that matter, probably even more so the Geelong Cats, any sort of room or any sort of speed coming out of stoppage going inside forward 50, this is what will happen because we understand that Tom Barris, and I'll say it again, is a really good defender at spoiling the football when the ball is coming in long and high. But he is so susceptible when you get him to push all the way up the ground and you can get him on the way back or on the lead. He's not an on the lead sort of defender. So if you can get really good stoppage exits like GWS are able to and like Geelong will be able to with Max Holmes and with Bailey Smith running out the front of these stoppages, running out the front of these contests, this is what will happen. Canelio just has to put it in the path of Jesse Hogan here, and look at the massive amount of separation from the key forward to Tom Barras in Jesse Hogan right here. It is so simple, so easy, and it's just a really small detail that I think the Hawks are susceptible to far too often. And why I think that can be such an issue for the Hawks against Geelong is the fact that the Geelong are probably the best team, the best group of forwards that actively lead up at the football. So we're going to see Geelong be able to exit out the front of this stoppage through Bailey Smith. And look at the immediate creation of separation from all of their forwards. So the first one is Manor, just creates that separation. The second one is Dangerfield, who did have to play, or didn't have to, got to play a lot on Barras the last time they played. Look at the creation of separation here. Shannon Neal is very versatile, very athletic for such a key forward. And Jeremy Cameron is going to wrap around the back here and create separation from Tom Barrass. And that ability to lead up the football and create separation, if Geelong can expose the Hawks at stoppage like I think they can, they are going to dominate them on the lead. So look at the amount of options that Geelong, that Bailey Smith has going inside forward 50, that he can essentially kick to any of these players, because they've all created so much separation going inside forward 50. Eventually he just puts it in the path of Dangerfield and Dempsey, and he just essentially puts it in the middle of both of them, and both of them could get it. Maybe he was trying to kick to Dangerfield to go, but kicked it, and he was lucky that Dempsey was there. Either way, what I'm talking about here is just the separation from all of the Geelong forwards to all of the Hawthorn defenders when Geelong were able to exit the front of stoppage really quickly and with pace. And if you want the crystal clear, perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about here, look, Geelong are going to exit out the front of this stoppage right now, and look at the work of Dangerfield here on Tom Barrass. It is so quick that Barrass has absolutely no chance to be able to keep up with him. And this is how Geelong are going to expose this Hawthorn defence, in my opinion, is that they're just going to be able to run away from him. Look at how much separation Dangerfield creates from Tom Barrass in this situation. He did it against Scrimshaw. He did it against Battle at times. This is what makes Geelong so good. This is what I think the Hawks' struggles are, or what the Hawks' struggles are going to be. So if they can't fix that in the next week, essentially, or the next few days, Geelong's forward line is going to get a lot of opportunities one-on-one on the lead. That's an issue. And that's the end of the video. It is a long one. I'm sorry, but there's going to be a few more videos coming out this week. As I said before, tomorrow we'll look at why I think the Hawks can win, and then we'll look at Collingwood's game, and then we'll look at the Brisbane game, and then obviously the review for both of these massive prelim finals going into grand final week. And of course, grand final week is going to be absolutely massive. We've got so much stuff planned for that, including some stuff with some AFL players, some current AFL players that we'll speak to about these exact things, depending on who makes the grand final. So you definitely want to be here for that. Make sure you stick around. Please subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.